Hi everyone, and welcome to the New York School of Design's Intro to Pattern Making. This is Lesson 1. My name is Vida Seiferie-Valencia, and I'm a fashion designer here in New York City. The purpose of these videos is for you to learn some of the techniques, methods, and terms used by fashion designers when they are creating patterns, or what we also call drafts. Drafting in itself is a very complex and necessary skill. It's basically transforming a two-dimensional drawing, a flat drawing on paper, and transferring that into fabric so it becomes a three-dimensional object. So being able to utilize certain math skills as well as your design sensibilities to draft out your pattern is really crucial for becoming and working as a fashion designer. Even if you don't necessarily pursue a career specifically in pattern making, which is where you would be, of course, drafting and developing patterns, either in-house or for a company, being able to identify what is a correct pattern shape, where do darts go, how can you transfer out a dart into some other place to make your garment fit better, is a super important skill. And so to me, pattern making really reflects sort of the holistic intent of the designer, from measurements to design details to actually figuring out how to make your garment fit perfectly and perform the way you want it to. Now, for these videos, I'm going to be utilizing the textbook Pattern Making for Fashion Design. This is the 5th edition by Helen Joseph Armstrong. This is a great textbook. It has many editions. Mine may be slightly different than yours potentially, but the drafts and the patterns within there are mostly the same. So with each of these videos, I'm going to be demonstrating a basic garment and how to fundamentally draft said garment. I'm going to begin today's lesson by showing you some of the tools we use as fashion designers within pattern making, and also as to some of the measurements we're going to need today for drafting what we call the skirt sloper. So when we're pattern making, of course, we need paper. So you can see here, this is just a dot paper, or this one has numbers actually, as well as letters to indicate each 1-inch space. These could be dots, it could be a different color, it could look slightly different, but in general, most of your pattern making paper is going to look something like this. The second is going to be all of the tools we will need for marking. So, of course, I am going to be utilizing a Sharpie today, and that is just so you will be able to see better on the screen what I'm actually drawing and writing. Do not do your actual drafts in Sharpie. The reason being, even if you're using a fine point Sharpie, the thickness of the line is going to add 1/16 or 32nds or 1/8 of an inch to your specs, and that can actually throw off your garment, believe it or not. So I always recommend a mechanical pencil. It's sort of up to you what is your preference, if you prefer a traditional pencil, but I prefer mechanical as well as a kneadable eraser. Additionally, we need to spend some time looking at how we're holding down our paper. So I'm just using these, our weights. Really, you can use anything you want or anything you have laying around. You just don't want it to be too cumbersome. We also need pins on occasion. I have a magnetic pin cushion, tape, so I have these paper tapes, which are great, which I use to mark my personal form. However, as you can see on this form here, it has this tape already, which is twill tape. So you can utilize a woven tape, which is held down with some of the pins, like I just showed you, to also mark out your form. I do like to have tape as well, just clear tape. I prefer the matte side, or the matte style clear tape, that way you can write over it. I have whiteout, which I do use if I'm utilizing a pen in any case. We also have our measuring and various other drafting tools. So, of course, we need rulers when we're creating patterns with measurements. So the main sort of bread and butter of your ruler is going to be something like this. It's clear, so you can see through it, and this is great for drawing out seam allowances or setting certain distances between lines. This side has inches and centimeters. This one is the same, where it's just inches, but it's a little bit shorter than this longer one. However, on both you can see that they're marcated out by 1/8 of an inch, so each of these little lines is 1/8 of an inch. We also have our hip curve. So the hip curve is sort of a partner to the varied form curve, and you can see that they're a little bit different in terms of the severity of the angle. Both of these are going to be used for creating curved seams. So if you take a look at this form here, if I hold up this hip curve, it does actually sit quite close to the actual hip of the form. So that is why it's called the hip curve. The varied form curve can be used also similarly to a hip curve, or it can be used as you need for a curved seam of either this severity or of a certain angle. We also have a regular ruler, which I always like to have just in case. We have the Taylor square. I usually refer to this as an L square. It's how I was trained. An L square, which is just a perfect right angle, has measurements on both sides. This is just great for drawing out your squared out lines. We have a triangle. So a triangle, mine is metal, sometimes they're plastic. This one's a little bit big. They do make smaller ones. This has inch measurements along this side, centimeters along this side. Next, we have the ever important French curve. Now, a French curve can come in all different types and shapes and sizes. The most crucial, though, is this one. So you can see it's a little bit, it's translucent, but it's a slightly different shade, so it doesn't disappear. This is going to be used to draw most of our necklines, as well as most of our armholes, and in general, curved seams are drawn most frequently with this French curve. There are others that come in all types of different shapes and colors. These are great. They can really be more appropriate for architecture or other types of drawing, but sometimes something like one of these two, sort of similar to what we call the sleigh curve, is also useful for us. We have scissors for cutting. So you want to make sure these are paper scissors. You don't want to use fabric scissors on paper, as they can affect each other.